Yeah, we're going to have a good time. So we can talk about one of two things. I mean, we can go the sales route, but a lot of people want to talk to me about sales. It sounds like we should talk about being an entrepreneur, man, because like my beginnings, I came from rock bottom, not even rock bottom, like subterranean, man. Like people at rock bottom were like, I feel sorry for that motherfucker. Like I came from like way below. I was locked up in prison for 4 years. I was adopted, homeless, like I started in this online business like because I absolutely had to. So we can talk about, like you said, that entrepreneur struggle and journey and stuff like that. I can give like real world practical shit that can make people be like, well, I don't have it that bad, so what's my excuse, you know?
So, Ryan, I think that's a fantastic place for us to start. I'd like to introduce Ryan Stewman to the podcast. Ryan, that was a fantastic way to start. And what I wanted to start with is your beginning of your entrepreneurial journey. One thing that certainly resonates with me is overcoming obstacles, dealing with fear. And a lot of times people see people who are successful and they're like, man, they've always had it good. But any entrepreneur who's ever gone out on their own knows adversity is everywhere. So let's start at the beginning of your journey. Tell us a little bit more about what's going down.
Well, so I've been in sales all my life. I've never had a salary job or taken a paid vacation or any of that thing. I've always worked in some form of commission. Sometimes it was like hourly plus commission, but it's always been some sort of a sales job. From the age of 13, I sold car washes. So like someone comes in, they want a $5 car or a $10 car wash. It's my job to sell them the $15 car wash and so on and so forth. Well, I had gotten into some trouble, went to prison for some drug activity, and was back working at this car wash at like 22 years old. And my goal, Rob, was to be the best damn car washer on the planet. Like nobody was going to be able to wash cars better than me. Like I would like steam them, clean them, shine them. Like, dude, I knew how to do it all. Sell them, smack them up, flip them, rub it down. Like that was me. Well, I got noticed like anybody who's a hard worker. Like when you're working hard and you're doing things that stand out above, which don't take much these days. It took a little bit more back then. But people notice you. Well, business lady that owned a mortgage company, she drove a nice car. She would get it washed pretty often. She was like, you know what? I see what you're doing out here and all the effort you put in. Why don't you come work for me in the finance industry? And I'm like, I started like the typical upper limits, right? Lady, I'm a felon. I'm a loser. I'm adopted. I have no degree. I don't even have a mortgage. Like I start giving her all these excuses. She's like, none of that matters. And you know, she's like, I'll be here next week. We can talk about it then. And I had a week to think about it, and really I was like, I don't really have much to lose. Was making like, all in all, if you like counted the commission and everything, like $16 an hour at the car wash. So it wasn't like I was getting rich. But then again, minimum wage was like $5 back then. So it was like a long time ago. When I started out there, I think minimum wage was like $3.80. So I've been working for a long time. But so I got this job in mortgages, and within a week, I got a deal, and within a month, I'd made like $6,700, which was like 4 months freaking work in the car wash business. And then immediately, like the next month, I made like another. It was either $7,000 or $14,000. It was a lot, and so like I was all the time, I'm rich, you know. It's like
I'm rich, bitch.
Yeah, exactly. Like this whole other side of the world that I didn't know about, and so I worked equally as hard in finance as I did in the car wash. But along the way, I ran into some rough patches, right? The cops in the town that I lived in, I started buying cars and shit. I was making like 700 grand a year. And I went from the hood, no education, then growing up, then making all this money. Of course, I'm doing dumb shit like you see rappers and like athletes and stuff like that. I got cars and a house. I got no kids, no nothing. I got a big ass house and shit, right? Like just doing dumb stuff that attract attention. And so they thought I was selling drugs, but I'm like, they don't come to this neighborhood to buy drugs. You know, cops, they're not always the outside of the box thinkers we entrepreneurs are. And so God bless them. And so I got in some trouble with the cops and caused some legal issues and stuff like that. And I went back to prison again for a gun this time. And in the state of Texas, you can own a gun if you're a felon. But I guess the ATF's like, we don't care what Texas says. And so they like supersede it, kind of like weed in California or Colorado. Like if the DEA catches you with a bunch of weed, your ass going to federal prison. You know, there's like no in between. Well, that's kind of how they do guns here in Texas. It's like it's legal for you to have it under the state, but if the feds want you. And so they found this loophole and put me in prison for another 15 damn months. And when I got out of prison, I went back to the mortgage business, Rob, and I crushed it again. It was 2008. People were jumping off of cliffs and like ruining their financial lives. And I'm over here like, you're leaving the mortgage business. I'm like, hey, Rob, who's going to take care of your people? right? I'm scooping up everybody's freaking referral list and their realtors and shit. And I'm making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year again. And in 2010, well, President Obama, he passed something called the Dodd-Frank Act, and it made it to where if you were a felon, you couldn't get a mortgage license. And they switched all the licenses from the state, which I had just kept renewing the whole time, over to a federal licensing deal. And the Fed said, if you have a federal crime, don't care what it is, you can't write mortgages. My whole life was gone right there. I come think about this. Twice I have been to prison. Twice I come back, started making money, exemplary fucking person in the neighborhood, in the community, and then bam, zap, I lose it all. Like I was one of the top dudes in the industry, and I couldn't even work in it anymore. Could you imagine?
So when you came back from prison the second time, was there any resistance to you getting back in the flow of it from the woman who brought you on board the first time, knowing that that's a potential hurdle? You're like, boom, I was crushing at this. Something unfortunate happened. How did that happen?
Well, crazier thing is, while I was in prison the second time, she died.
Oh.
Right? The woman's dead, right? So I get out. And like, I don't even have anybody to verify my experience, but I got my parole officers for sure going to call and make sure that's a real job. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have to be the hardcore closer at this point, right? Like, I got to go in there and sell somebody. And it took me, I saw these people that were leaving the industry at the time. And so I went to the biggest bank in the state of Texas that did mortgages, and it wasn't public, so I didn't have to go through like exclusive background testing. But there's a loophole with banks. And if they're a bank, you don't have to have this license until 2010. So I went to this bank, and I knew they weren't going to go out of business because they were the biggest. So while the other guys were failing, they were just scooping up market share, which is what I would do as well. And so it took me about 3 hours and 2 different interviews to convince the sales manager. He's like, you're a 2-time felon. I don't give a shit what your W-2 says. I'm like, listen, man, but none of that has to do with mortgages, right? Like, and I didn't have tattoos and all that stuff then, right? I was like very clean cut, wore a suit and all that. So I was like, doesn't have anything to do with mortgages, man. I had a gun. It's a damn gun, you know? It's like, you have guns. You probably have one in your desk right now. It's Texas. Like, I just was at the wrong place, the wrong time. So I closed the guy. And within 60 days, I was like top 5 producer. Within 90 days, I was number 1, and I just ran the damn score up for the next like 3 years, you know?
Let's talk about that and the success that allowed you to be very good at selling mortgages, but more importantly, which is one of your hallmarks, is closing. And I've had experience where you become the number 1 sales guy, and it's awesome. And it's sometimes hard for people to understand how you can go from as low as you were to being number 1. So take me to that. What was your mindset for this is how I'm going to be the ultimate closer?
Man, that's a really good question, Rob, because I don't have a choice. You see, I told you guys in the beginning, it was like adopted, and which I don't have a relationship with my parents now. I don't give a shit. I don't know where they live. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, we don't talk. None of that matters. And so I'm not saying anything bad about them. I'm just saying I don't know. And so I couldn't rely on them. I didn't rely on my grandparents. Same thing. I don't know anybody's guess. So I didn't have any family that could look out for me. And we moved a lot as kids and stuff like that, and switching schools and then dropping out. So I didn't have a lot of friends. And then the friends that I did have, they were just as poor as we were. They couldn't afford to feed another kid or take somebody in or risk getting in trouble with maybe the drugs I had or whatever. So sales was like the one thing that was always there for me. So like when I got out of federal prison, it wasn't like my parents were there to help me out. I had to go make some sales. So, and the byproduct of when you hadn't made money in 15 months is you need a lot of money really quick. And so I just went to work and became the top producer, not because I wanted to be like, hey, yo, look at me, a big dick top producer over here. I became top producer because I'm like, man, I'm trying to keep my ass from getting locked back up in federal prison for some shit this time, you know?
So a lot of that just sounds like you were self-motivated because you knew what you didn't want. And I think a lot of people struggle with the internal motivation, certainly doing a job that they don't like. And I don't think that you woke up saying, man, I cannot wait to sling some mortgages. But something switched in you to say, listen, I know the outcome that I want, and I'm going to see this differently so that I can achieve my goals a certain way. And what would you say to someone who may not be living that purpose-driven life that you were?
Man, I wasn't living a purpose-driven life. That's not... Let me explain what happened. So there's a few times in my life where this voice in the back of my head was like, hey, Ryan, you need to be helping people. And I thought, I am, dude. I'm doing mortgages. Shut the fuck up, right? Like, and then the voice in the back of my head would be like, hey, Ryan, I need you to help people, man. You're not reaching people doing what you want. And I'm like, dude, I helped 1,400 people get a house last year. What do you mean? And again, this voice in my head, and I ignored it, and I just kept going into mortgages. Finally, this voice in my head, like the mortgages were taken away from me, right? I can no longer operate the mortgages. The voice in my head was like, you weren't supposed to be doing that all along. I put you in prison to get you away from this crap, and then you came right back to it. So they had to literally burn every bridge to keep me from it. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, that's what they do. They have a job that they make good money at, right? I was making multiple six figures a year, which is good money. I don't care who you are, especially on a W-2. And I've lived a very comfortable life. I lived in like $100,000 house, bro, because I had just come from prison and I didn't want any debt. And I didn't, you know what I mean? So I was like living way below my means. And so like there wasn't anything that I couldn't buy as far as like what we had saved and stuff like that. And it was all just taken from me in an instant. And the thing about that was like, it's because I wasn't living my purpose. But that voice, when it was all taken from me, that voice said, you're not supposed to be putting people in houses. Like it's cool. You did a good job at it. You made money with it, but you're supposed to be helping other people that are struggling in their life right now. And the voice, it was like, it's almost like as if it had to just like slap me and be like, hey man, you know what I mean? Like how many times am I going to have to tell you and do some dumb shit to you before you start actually listening to me? And so I got in alignment with this voice, but I had to go on this journey of learning marketing and learning, technology and how to build funnels and how to run ads on Facebook and YouTube and all of this stuff in order to get this message that I've had inside of me. I bet there's a lot of entrepreneurs and coaches and consultants that probably listen to this show that the same thing. They're like, I just want to help people. But at the same time, if you're going to do that, you got to get good at sales and marketing and advertising, or you'll never be in front of the people that you could help. And I had to learn that, and I had to learn it super fast because I was on a budget because all of a sudden I had no more income. And listen, I even though I wasn't out there living in multi-million-dollar homes, driving Ferraris and stuff, I still did have bills. I still had the government chasing me from the damn, being on parole and everything else, wondering why I didn't have a job. So, it was a nightmarish time in my life as an entrepreneur. But what I know, folks, is that if you make it through tough times like that, whether it be prison, divorce, adoption, struggling to build your business, it's strength conditioning from the world to see how much pain you can endure, how much responsibility you can endure, because we all see what happens when life just gives somebody $1 million. Lottery winners are broke immediately, right? Because they didn't go through the strength conditioning. You shoot somebody up with steroids, they bench press 300 pounds like it ain't nothing. You know what I mean? And then you don't shoot them up with steroids anymore. They go try to pick that 300 up. It'll crush their arms. And so what I've been doing my whole life is gone through these hardships and strength conditioning so that now that I am this, like, and they say I'm a sales coach, but that's like 1% of what we do, really. It's just like how we got started at this point. But, now that I am out here, I'm listening to that voice and I'm truly being able to change the world. But it's been a hell of a struggle to get there. I mean, it's been nice the last couple of years, but it's been a hell of a struggle for 35 years.
Can you talk about the importance of self-education? Because for me, in the last 7 years, I've learned more on my own than I ever did in college as an entrepreneur, because my mindset was, listen, I burned the boats, so if I'm going down with this ship, there is no way possible I'm going to look back and say, man, I wish I would have read that book or reached out to this other person or even had a podcast like this. So for me, that's why it's so important. The first thing I do every single day is read for 45 minutes, because I know if I can make today better than yesterday, then it's going to be a success. And you mentioned a lot of the things I'm going through, ClickFunnels and Facebook advertising. And I didn't know how to podcast. I didn't know Photoshop, video, social media, all of this stuff. I'm just a hustler who all of a sudden it's like, well, what's the alternative? You have to learn how to do it. So where did that come from for you, and how did you build that out?
Well, man, these kids these days got it so easy. We used to have to upload a FPF file into Bluehost and create a blog with HTML code to make a landing page, man. Like ClickFunnels and lead pages and all that stuff didn't even exist in 2010. So I had zero tech skills. Mind you, I had been a banker and a prison, the two places they don't allow the internet, right? Like, let's just be real. And so like I still had a BlackBerry, bro. It was that time, I used to tell people, hey man, you can make money from social media. And they were like, you mean the Facebook? Right? Like it was just a totally different time in our lives. But I knew that you could make money from Facebook and stuff because I had done so when I was doing mortgages. I would post on Facebook, so I got top producer again this month, and people would hit me up asking if I'd refinance their house and stuff. And so I started off teaching people this stuff, but I had no clue about business. None. I'm 8th grade education, dropped out in the 9th grade. Last grade I graduated from was the 8th grade. I have no college, no friends that have any education. Most of my friends are freaking locked up in prison or working at a car wash. You know what I mean? Like I have like, and then in the banking world, it's a bunch of like just dudes just like me. They come from checkered ass past that are out there just like stockbrokers or anything else, a bunch of party animals and shit. And so here I am with like nobody, and I'm doing this internet marketing thing way before that was cool. And so I'm like, I'm gonna be this internet marketer. People like, oh shit, he's going back to prison soon, ain't he? Damn it. You know, I mean, like that was really, really what happened. But I ran in like this real estate agent that I did mortgages for. I went to lunch with him, was going to ask him for a job. I was just with him at Joe Rogan like a couple of days ago. Went and saw Joe Rogan stand up. I got to meet Dana White and party with him on Friday night. It was badass. Yeah, it's all over my Facebook page right now. I went to the I went and spoke to the UFC fighter Saturday before the fight. Like got them all amped up and shit. And all the dudes I spoke to won that night. So it's badass.
Yeah.
And so I go and as far as the like self-educate, I know I don't have all the answers, right? And so I go and I meet this real estate agent, and he's like, hey, man, I paid $8,000 for these DVDs. And I'm like, $8,000? But this guy's like the cheapest person I know. I paid for his ticket Friday still, and he makes way more money than I do. And so he's like, cheapest person I know. The fact that he spent $8,000 on something's like, this blew the back of my mind out, right? And so I was like, well, let me get him, man. Let me see what you got there. Come on, let hook a brother up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I take these DVDs from him, and it's Ryan Dice. And he's talking about the continuity blueprint. And I was like, education like this exists? And it taught me, like he taught me how to code and create WordPress and all this stuff in this like $8,000 16 set DVD series that I watched, right? It was like, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And from there, I met obviously Frank Kern. And so I bought his Mass Control and started learning from it. And then I hired him and Kevin Nations to do like this live training thing for like 10 grand back in the day. And I just wrote an article. It's on my website, hardcorecloser.com, about how I've spent $500,000 with mentors over the year, because I don't know how to run a business. So my business has been structured off of Frank Kern's training, Kevin Nations, Russell Brunson. And I've paid all these guys like tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, because nowadays when I hire them, like I was just at Frank Kern's house. Like I sat at his kitchen table, and for 2 days, we figured out what the hell we were going to do as far as like a better way of optimizing my business. I just spoke at I got to meet Dan Kennedy and hung out with him one night. Like I just spoke at his event at GKIC. And like I've been to Russell Brunson's personal house and watched him kick John Rude's ass in the wrestling gym before. So like but I didn't know. But as I got money, I didn't start buying lavish houses and Ferraris and all. I do have a Maserati, but it was a long time into the business before I got one, and I lease it. And it still doesn't hardly cost what you think it does. And so the reason why I say this, I haven't gone out there and blown all this money on Rolexes and shit. I wear a $50 Fitbit, and I spent my money investing back in people that could educate me to where I can help more people. Because at this point, for me as an entrepreneur, it's about contribution. How many people can I help? How many people can I change their mind so that they can change their life, right? That's what we say at Hardcore Close. Say when we change your mind, we change your life. And so it's my job to get out there and see how many minds I can change. And you know, it's more about contribution. I make more money now than I did when I was in mortgages, and I never expected this to happen. So I'm at a point, well, I expected it, but I never knew it was going to be like this. So I'm at a point now where I'm still just investing heavy dollars back into our business to continue growing, because it really is about reaching people and giving them a better quality of life.
My mindset has always been, when you invest in yourself, no one can ever take that back from you. And it's especially hard for entrepreneurs who are on the up, who haven't made it yet. And you're like, man, every one of these dollars, like every dollar you spend on a training course could be $1 in ClickFunnels or in Facebook advertising or in anything else. And sometimes seeing the price tags, I know for me, it's like you go from buying something for $49 and then you get something for like $149. You're like, holy shit. And then there's this level of internet, is this real? Because you're like, I don't know Russell Brunson, despite the fact that he's everywhere, he has books and all these things. People are naturally skeptical about it. And then like I'm going through a bunch of Grant Cardone stuff right now where he's slinging stuff from 149 to 8 grand to 25 grand. And you're like, who the shit can buy this? And is this real? And I think it's a real big barrier that people need to overcome to accept the fact that other people can get you to where you want to go with their knowledge and help you not make the mistakes that they did.
Yeah, and that's what it's about and I've paid the things from 149 to, taking little bitty courses to last 2 weeks ago, I just paid, it's $50,000 to go spend a day with Marshall Silver. And I negotiated a deal with them for 30 grand, right? A whopping 20 grand off. But I mean, because I have leverage and all the other stuff that I could do with them. So, but I mean, I spent 30 grand to go, plus the travel, plus taking my vice president out there as well, so that I could take what he does from the stage and acclimate it into my act out there and get some help. And guess what? I turn around, I make a video, we run some traffic to it, we make our 30 grand back within 24 hours. We've already made like over 100 grand from it in 2 weeks since we implemented it. But that's the key. It's like every time I invested in we'll call it myself, but every time I invested in information, I know that I have to take action on that information. Like information is nothing without application. So when I go to Marshall's, I didn't just sit there and go, wow, that was a lot of great information. By the time we left, we had a choreograph down. We put a sales pitch out and we started making money from it, right? We ran traffic to it. We sent it to our email list because with me, I'm not doing these to be friends. Like Frank and Marshall, they're great guys. Kevin Nations, Russell Brunson, great guys. But I'm not doing this to be their friends. That's like a perk of the job. I'm doing this so I can change lives and make money and help the people that are going alongside of me. Like at this point in my career, I've helped 9 people make 6 figures in a month. I don't give a shit who you are. That's life-changing money. And that is I've done a lot of drugs, man. And that's still the best feeling out of any drug, any rush. I've jumped from airplanes, climb mountains, all that shit. And that's still like the greatest rush when someone's like, dude, I'm 100% debt free. My life is completely changed. And I have all this money and all this contribution to these people's lives, whether they're real estate clients or bankers or whatever the case is. Like there's no rush like that, But you're right. There's a lot out there on the internet and you're like, is this real or is it not real?
So we'll end this with some quick questions. Starting off with, right now, what are some of the principles you live your life by?
Well, I live my life by a few. One of the things is if you can't beat them, join them. I learned that from Bugs Bunny, right? And if I don't think that I'm very competitive, so if I don't think that I can beat somebody, then I'd rather just team up with them. And the other thing is, we have a saying, he who points the blame takes the shame. So I know oftentimes when people are saying, this person cheats or this person lies or this person steals, really, those are the things that they feel inside that they notice in you, because what we see in others is a direct reflection of what we see in ourselves, right? And so I always look, anytime I see somebody that's going, this guy, the hardcore closer guy, he's full of shit. And I'm like, this person's obviously full of shit because they don't know me. And that's a reflection of them. Whereas a lot of people take it personally. I try not to do that so much these days. And then another principle that I live by that help a lot of people is I do my best to unplug from social media. Due to the nature of my business, it's not always possible. But I have 2 phones. Much like our friend Kevin Gates, the rapper.
Got 2 phones.
That's right. One for the family, one for the job, right? And so, I have a phone that I take out on like date nights when we go out and stuff like that. It doesn't have any social media on it. Doesn't have anything. It doesn't plug into the internet. Like it doesn't have the Google Chrome. There's no way for me to get on social media so that when I'm with my kids or with my wife or out with my friends or whatever the case may be, I get to enjoy that moment and not miss it because I'm trying to post it on social media or scroll in imaginary land, because it's addicting, And the less I get on social media, the more my mind finds new ways to make money. I got kicked off Facebook for a month back in February. Long story. We ain't got time for it today, but I got kicked off for a month back in February for talking shit to somebody. And in that month, I created 3 new businesses, and 2 of those businesses are already on track to do 7 figures this year, just because I had the extra time and energy of unplugging. It taught me a lesson. I'm like, oh shit, I got to spend less time on there,
Within the last month, I deleted Facebook from my phone for that exact reason. I need to be creating, not consuming. All right, next question. Yep. What separates those who are good from great at sales?
Practice. I think that's what made me good was we might wash 1,000 cars in a day. So I got to talk to 1,000 people in a day, sometimes often, 2 or 3 of days like that a month. And I did that for almost 10 years. And so I just got really practice it in front of people. That's the best thing that you can do. Somebody that's good at sales is somebody that knows who they want to sell to and is putting the practice in to get better and better at helping those people.
And can you leave everybody with one piece of advice that has really resonated with you in your life?
Yeah, the one piece of advice that's always resonated with me, I'll go back to the strength conditioning thing, is like, oftentimes we try to think of ourselves as poor me. Why are these things happening to me? I remember there was a time in 1999 when I found out the judge had sentenced me to 2 years in prison. And I was like, why me? I see all these people moving, all this massive amount of drugs, and I just barely had any. And why has it got to be like this? And I remember when I got in there, this shit made me a man. I thought I was a man, but I wasn't. But once I got in there, I learned what it was like to be a real man, and it's much like, not to compare the two, much like when somebody joins the army at 18 and they go off to war, they learn what it's like to be a real man. Now, obviously that's a lot cooler, better, and more dangerous job than being a prisoner. But I'm just saying, in those extreme life or death circumstances, you learn how to be a man. And as I got out of there, I got my life together. I got on cloud 99. And again, I hit the rock bottom when the police came and they took all that from me, and I ended up having to go do 15 months. I thought again, why me? Why? I've done everything right. I cleaned my life up. I don't have drugs. They didn't find drugs. Why did they even have to go? Why couldn't they have just been cool and been like, our bad dog, we're out of here? Like, why me? And I look back now and I see all these times when I ask myself, like, why things were happening to me. And I tell this guy the other day, and it's a long story how I got there, but I was like having this out of body experience, and the guy that was there with me was telling me, he said, man, you've brought these things on yourself to prove that you can overcome anything. You could have easily not done any of these things, but it was your choice to attract them. And now you have to make the single shift to stop wanting to do things the hard way, because that's how you feel like you learn, and start going with the flow. And I realized that my whole life, that's how I learned. I had to learn, just like you said, through these like hardcore experiences. And I've been able to catch a lot more momentum since I've had that ability to, obviously stop finding things and learn them the hard way, and be able to really, at this point in my career, it's been leveraging the knowledge of others, right? Instead of having to go through and do things the hard-headed my way, I leverage the knowledge and ability of others.
What I love about you and your story is your authenticity, plus your willingness to help others and deliver value. For all the listeners right now, I don't think you really even need a sales pitch for why you should check out all of Ryan's stuff, because that right there is about as good as it gets. But Ryan, I want you to drop as many plugs as you want. Where can people connect with you? Because I think people need to get in your funnel, learn and read more about what you're doing. And just starting with one thing, hopefully this podcast inspired people to take action. Get in there and see how you can take control of your own life and be the master of your own destiny.
Well, I appreciate that, Rob. The best place to find me is at hardcorecloser.com. That's got all my articles. I've personally written 704 blog posts, and we've created 157 pages on that thing. So it is like loaded with information. If you can think about it, from being a coach, a marketer, Facebook ads, sales, like all the things that I've had to learn and go through, it's all right there on that site. Like, use the search bar. That is a badass resource tool of firsthand experience, videos, training. I give away way too much stuff there. So that's hardcorecloser.com. And over there, you'll see that I write for Forbes. I write for Entrepreneur. I write for Huffington Post. I got an 8th grade education, and I write and am featured in every month. Forbes sends me a thing and asks me 4 or 5 questions questions, and then they quote me. They fucking Forbes quotes me. It's crazy in their magazine every month, right? And so like the credibility and stuff you'll see over there doesn't end, and that should motivate you too. And I don't say all that to brag, but I say that it's like, dude with an 8th grade education, has been to prison twice, is quoted once or twice a month in Forbes, and I don't pay for it. I don't pay a PR person. I don't have it's not a scam thing. It's like Forbes and me, we like tight like this. They send me emails every month, and it's ridiculously insane the amount of things you can do if you just put your heart to it. But just head over to hardcorecloser.com. You can find out pretty much anything you want about me, social media, all that other stuff. We got books we can give you and everything else. But that would be the key place to find me.